growing up, I experienced an eating disorder myself, and I felt that some people are misguided with diseases like addiction, eating disorders. They think that it's based on willpower. And I really didn't want to work with eating disorders. I felt like it was somewhat chapter in my life. I closed the book. But I really found a love for addiction because it's like parallel to an eating disorder. It's something that consumes you, takes over your life, makes you do things that you didn't think you would ever do. And I just felt that people had a misconception on people with an addiction. So I felt like I wanted to be a voice for them since I've experienced something of an addiction in my own life. So Crossroads is an outpatient treatment facility. It's a level 1. It's where you go when you're done with, I'm going to give you so you would go to a residential treatment center, 30 days, 6 months. It could, whatever you can afford at that time, your insurance could cover. And then you would come to an IOP, which is an intensive outpatient program. And that's 3 days a week. And you would go to groups, and then you would go to individual counseling. And then you would come here after you've completed that. So this is a 16-week outpatient treatment program, which consists of individual therapy once a week. It's kind of a stepping stone, where you need to go in life and how you're going to get there. And this is kind of like the last crutch that you need. And we give you everything you need to know. Make sure that you have your coping skills. You have this in your back pocket. God forbid that happened. We also try to do groups here. We're working on bringing in a girls group, an older male group, an older woman group, so that people can come here and kind of see the universality that I'm not alone. We do programs like Reaching Out. We do programs like Project Plus, which is we go out to the 5th graders in the elementary schools and tell them, we're doing this program. You could come, you get snacks, and we bring in like Chief Weber, Nikki Francis. She's great. She's a prevention worker, and she helps give the kids an understanding of, we need to inform them, this is the drug, this is what it looks like, don't stay away, but be informed of what it does. I think parents are like, don't tell my kid anything, I don't want them to know anything. So Project Plus kind of lets them talk about what they care about, like girls, boys, whatever. Maybe somebody asked them to drink some alcohol. They can talk about that and see what they can do to be better as a peer leader, as we would call it. So it's a great program. Crossroads runs it. We've done it for a lot of years now, and parents say, please keep bringing this back. We want to be informed, because the parents sometimes are more informed than the children, because the parents don't understand how much their kids know about drugs. So Crossroads does a bunch of things with substance abuse related things around Middletown, and I think Middletown in itself is a terrific town because they really provide all these options for people. I've lived in other towns, and it is very far and few that they do all these programs for the town. Heroin, when I was in high school, was something that was out of perspective. It was not even in my line of view. You heard about it, but it was not even there. Nowadays, when we asked about heroin in the 5th graders, about 70% of the room raised their hand. And that was shocking, and that really put me back. 5th graders know about heroin. I mean, that's where our world is right now. And unfortunately, it doesn't matter where it is. We all have to meet up with it. So we need to make sure people are aware, because in high school, when kids are experimenting, I would like to say about 8 out of 10 experiment. And not with the harder drugs, I'm saying with marijuana and alcohol. But about 5 of those kids are going to do the harder drugs. So it's a pretty big percentage. Trying to reach as many younger kids as we can, trying to give them the education of what drugs exactly do, how it affects your brain, your growth, all this. And then you're going to get this lump of children that don't care and want to continue to use. And that's where we have to watch I think the pharmaceutical aspect of our country is really big, and they're not doing it for the people, they're doing it for the money. So that's a big problem. We have to be more on top of that. And I think Governor Christie did a decent job with trying to fix the pharmaceuticals and the doctors and how they prescribe pain medication, because I mean, the statistic is probably 8 out of 10 people that get on heroin, it's because they started with painkillers and they can't afford them. So now they have to go with heroin. Each person in life, I think, goes through their own journey, and we'd like to say that we don't have that and we don't experience that pain, but each person has their own story. I often say addiction is like a tree and it needs a root to grow. So when something traumatic, pain in the family, constant turmoil, that's where the addiction starts, and it grows over the years. And I think that sometimes it gets out of control and it doesn't stop. So I've had clients that I've worked with that say, I have thousands of fines, I don't have my family, I live in a car, I'm just going to continue using drugs because what life is there. And sometimes being empathetic, you can see yeah, I understand, I would probably continue to use drugs too, but I don't think they see the reverse side, that if they stopped, they could get their family back, they could get a house, they could start paying their fines. It's a lot. So I feel that some people use the drug as a suicide attempt because it's like they don't feel they deserve to live anymore because of everything they've lost or they've thrown away or they've given up for the drugs. What I do with substance abuse clients is called motivational interviewing. It's a type of therapy that kind of pushes them to see that the power and the potential they have. And they understand that maybe I am a good person. I try to point out the good things they've done, the accomplishments they've made. I try to find where they are and not to say pump them up, but make them feel like they're worth it so they can get out of the substance abuse addiction. So that's the hardest thing. I've had a client now for about a year and a half who keeps coming back to me because he was relentless. He didn't want to go. I told him he needed to go to a residential treatment center for 30 days at least and to get the tools he needed to, because that's the main goal. I need tools to bring back home so when I'm in the environment that's causing me all this pain, I know how to deal with it. A lot of people don't want to deal with emotions. They've had a long day at work. They want to come home and have a drink because it's been too rough. They need vices. So people that are sober need to figure out, okay, I can't have any of those vices anymore. What can I do to deal with my emotions in a positive and healthy way? So for me, I have a lot of clients that come here once a week. And that's hard because once a week compared to the other 6 days, it's a mountain to get over in itself. So usually I will recommend a client that I see is struggling to go to a more invasive treatment. But again, it's their call. Unless they're on probation and they are mandated, if they just come here by themselves, they get to choose if they want to do that in more intensive program. And it's a lot. I think anxiety in our world today is a huge influence on people making decisions. And to look at going into treatment is like, it takes your breath away because you're like, oh my God, 30 days in a program. But I like to tell them that 30 days compared to the rest of your life is really nothing. I mean, a month is nothing compared to 10 years. So people come to see me. They call me up. They're really about treatment. They say, Rebecca, can I please come in? And I'm like, of course. I make it work, change my schedule. They come in. We talk about what the possibilities are. And the minute I say, I think it's best if you go away, that whole tools, again, learning the tools, they instantly, I can see it in their face. It gets kind of shut down. A lot of people want instant, fix me now and I'm good in one session. And that's the biggest problem. And for substance abuse, I know like marriage counseling, family counseling, substance abuse has the highest non-attendance rate for scheduling. So I'll make 6 assessment schedules and maybe 2 will show. Because it's part of the disease. They don't want, it's like this cycle of not wanting to get better, and then you have these days where you want to get better. It's like the devil and angel on your shoulder always telling you like stop and then go, and this perception of that drug addiction only takes on people that are poor, that don't have a lot, that they used to call it junkies. Now, I think people are starting to understand that it's really doesn't matter your age, doesn't matter your race, doesn't matter your ethnicity, doesn't matter your economic status. It can affect anyone in any of those areas. I've had people come in, I've had a doctor come in to see me who lost his license because he was addicted to painkillers. And then I've had someone who was homeless come in to me because they didn't know where else to go and they were using drugs and they really reached a bottom. So it's really all areas of the spectrum. I know that if your mom and your dad are addicted, you have about an 80% chance of becoming an addict yourself. So genetically, that's a way to get into it. So if one parent is addicted, you have more of I think it's a 40% chance to become an addict, 40 to 50. Now, for those who don't have any addiction in their family, you always hear they grew up in a great home, great family. Sometimes it's just they get into it and they find that it eases something in them that they didn't find previously. I had a girl who her dad gave her everything. He was a great, great father, but she was partying with the wrong people, got into pills, and said, whoa, this is awesome, but it's too expensive, and went to heroin and became a serious heroin addict, was stealing $3,000 from her brother, from her dad, writing false checks, stealing jewelry. And she said it just became easier than dealing with life, dealing with maybe drama and problems and sadness and anger. I think anger is also a big one, that emotion. We often are always getting angry, but realistically it's because we're sad. And it's easier to convey anger than it is to cry and be sad in this world. So people that are like constantly have that aggressive tendency want to ease it, and drugs help it. I also think it's something of adrenaline because people who often use drugs often have sex addictions and then go in to have gambling addictions and then go in to have workout addictions. So people kind of merge into other things once they're getting better from that. So I often think that they're looking to get a rush because that is what each one provides. They each let out dopamine in your brain. Working out leads out dopamine. Having sex leads out dopamine. And then gambling leads out dopamine. So all those combined give a person this big high. I mean, it doesn't hurt if someone wants to go jump out of a plane instead of using drugs, but there is definitely a correlation with those behaviors. One client sticks out to me because he said to me, if this is not a disease, I don't know what is, because he said he lost his daughter, he lost his family, he lost his house, he went to jail about 4 or 5 times, and he said that back when he was growing up in high school, this was not even a blip on the radar. So it's something that consumes you, and I think it costs you people around you, because if you've had an addiction in your family, and most of us have, you see this different person. So it costs that person's demeanor, their personality. It just steals them of a future. It steals them of the competence to know right from wrong. It steals them from a lot. I mean, I've seen people that have just been mere shells of who they were, just running on heroin, running on drugs day in and day out, and that's all they cared about. When you're too much on your children, I think it makes them lash out. You know, they're not being able to see things how they should see them and work through problems. I believe that parents that talk to their children every night, I had a family that I nannied for. They were a psychiatrist and a psychologist. And every night when I would be sitting there with them, you know, this stuck in my brain for my kids. They would talk about, okay, what'd you have at school? What problems you run into? And their one son would get, I mean, so angry sometimes. And she would still maintain her cool and say, tell me why you're so angry. And eventually it would come out, because that's all we want to do. People just want to be listened to. I think that's a big problem. And parents do not listen to their children. They tell them what to do, and they don't think they know any better. I think if you allow your child to tell you their side and maybe how they're experiencing things, and understand them and listen to them, I think that helps children feel empowered to make better decisions, to follow a better road. Parents that are always putting down their children, yelling at them for things that in the end we've all done, that makes the child feel worthless, which contributes to addiction. I also think that when people are in addiction, parents often don't know what to do. They call. I know I've gotten numerous calls from parents in distress. My son's addicted. I don't know what to do. And realistically, I often tell them, all you can do is support them and tell them there is a way out. You know, we can get you help. But when you give them ultimatums like, oh, I'm going to, get out of this house because you don't love us, you're not trying to get better. When you put love and all these feelings into stopping the addict, it doesn't help, because that makes them feel worse. There are such a thing as boundaries, though. I mean, parents, we don't want you to enable your child when they're in a substance abuse related disorder. We want them to feel that they're losing things because of it, right? So some parents, they have to have an intervention, and they say, listen, if you don't stop, we can't support you anymore. You're going to have to leave the house. That's a boundary. But giving them the $20 and saying, I don't want to see it in my house, that's enabling. So a lot of parents love their child and they don't want to see them die, so they give them the money to get it or help them. But there's a strong line that's between enabling and helping, because people don't want to hear that they're aiding in the substance abuse related issue. So I just think that parents also need to be aware. Al-Anon meetings are great for people that are experiencing, even like not even family members, like friends that don't know what to do with their friend. It's a great place for people to go to find information and understand, okay, this is what I'm doing wrong. Maybe I should try this. Alcohol is legal, so I can stop the heroin, but I can still have a drink here now and then. However, I'm often telling people that when you drink alcohol, it cuts off the logical part in your brain. That's why we often are lubricated to do things we wouldn't do when drinking alcohol. So when someone who is addicted to heroin is sober, quote unquote, actually it's called clean, and they use alcohol, it might make them lubricated to go back into the behavior. So I often say that heroin addicts and alcoholism, it's really the same beast, but it's kind of like, what are you looking to accomplish high-wise? Alcoholism is definitely a downer. It's a depressant, so it's going to bring you down. Heroin has told to bring people up. So it'll make them work all day. It'll bring out the tiredness. I mean, of course, when you inject it, it's differently. I mean, it's different. But prospectively, if you're an alcoholic, you can easily get into another drug if you're trying to stop that. If you're a heroin addict, you can easily get into being an alcoholic, and I've seen it happen because they're trying to get off the heroin, so they pick up another drug. They're basically substituting. So they can merge together, and you could become a heroin alcoholic addict. I mean, I've seen someone who was addicted to Xanax, heroin, and alcohol. When I got into this, when I was doing my master's program, they kept telling you, you know, there's a big burnout rate in substance abuse. There's a big burnout rate in substance abuse. And I can see that. You know, I work part-time because I need my, what we call is self-care. And I need to have my days to collect myself because I think it's about I want to say like a 1% that people get out of substance abuse and stay clean and sober for an extended period of time. And I have people that come in here all the time at Crossroads that are mandated by probation that have huge problems and are addicted, but because of probation they're coming and not because their heart's in it. And that's hard. You know, I often tell people, I cannot run the race for you. I can't have you on my back. You got to run with me and we can cross the line together. So some days I definitely leave here feeling like, am I doing my job? Am I even good at my job? I'm still lost, but I rarely will get those clients that will come back to me later on in life, like a year later, and be like, Becky, thank you, because without you there, I wouldn't have been able to go further. So when you get that little gleam of hope, those are the ones that will push you forward. Most of them, clients don't make it out. They come one time, they come 2 times, and that's it. But I've had those very rare successful moments that give me the hope that I need. So I had a client come in who, I brought him up earlier, told me that he would never go to rehab. It did nothing for him. He's been there about 5 or 6 times. Whatever. I don't need it. And he fought me tooth and nail, and I said, fine, we'll work where you are. I'm going to be here where you are. So I met him where he was. That's what we call in the clinical world. And he would use by month to month, I would say. There would be a relapse here and there. And he met someone, and I told him, don't meet this person. You're not supposed to meet anybody in your first year of getting clean. But he denied me again. And we worked on that. Okay, what do you deal with? She makes your emotions come up. You can't just run to use. So he got kicked out of his house. There were things happening, and I kept him here because he had nowhere else to go. He had no insurance. And just recently, he finally said to me, I'm going to rehab. I'm doing what you told me. It only took me this long to figure out that I need it. And without you there, I wouldn't have been able to get there. And the one thing that struck out the most to me was everyone had denied him and just kicked him to the curb. And he said, through everything, Becky, you've stood by me and believed in me, and I needed that. And listened to me. And like I said, I think the listening part is key. And making someone understand that they are important, even though people might not give them that boost and tell them that they need to know they are worth it. So now I think he's going to be getting into an Oxford house. So hopefully he'll continue his recovery positively. You can wake up and think of 1,000 things that are negative. But there are probably 3 or 4 things that are the most positive in your life that you can look to and be appreciative, and you don't because you're always worried about those negatives. It really has opened my eyes to understand that life is not about having the best stuff, the best this, the most important person to walk into the office. Life is about your inner happiness. And can you look at yourself and say, I'm a good person, I enjoyed my day today, I did what I could to help someone. it made me reflect on just being a more humble and understanding person, and an empathetic one too. I definitely hear from my parents, you got to work more, you got to do this, you got to work 40 hours a week. And in my head, I'm saying, as long as I have what I need in my life, as long as I pay the bills, and as long as I can put food on the table for my dog, my 2 cats, and my husband, I'm happy. And that's really what it comes down to. I think our lives, and the millennials that we see, myself included, we're seeing that life is about happiness, not about the stuff, not about the materialistic items. Those are nice. Don't get me wrong. I like to go shopping here and there. But if I can lay down in my bed and say that I made the right decisions, even though they were hard, and I am trying to be a better person every day, I think I continually be happy as long as I can. I mean, trust me, I have my days that I'm not happy. I just think that for the reaching out aspect of our program, having people understand that it's not something negative for addiction. I think the more people that we can reach and say that this is something that's a universal issue. It's not just these people, we're going to push them to the side. They're not involved. We're just going to not notice them. I mean, this is something that really affects all ranges of our society. And I think the more people get involved, the more people want to help, the more volunteers or people that are like, maybe I'm suffering from this problem and I do need to get help. The more understanding we can all be and empathetic, I think that's a huge word. Empathy is a big word. It's not feeling sympathy for someone. It's understanding where they're at and why they're there. And I don't think we have enough of that in this world. So the more we can be empathetic, the more we can understand, and the more we can come together and try to prevent this addiction from growing, I think we can make progress.